I remember that day as clearly as the twin moons of my homeworld. The way the artificial lighting in the grand chamber cast long shadows across the polished floors. The subtle hum of the environmental systems that usually faded into background noise seemed somehow louder, more ominous. Perhaps my mind simply chooses to remember it that way, given what followed. Oh, my apologies. I should introduce myself. I am Zixtal, former junior diplomatic officer of the Galactic Council. Now I serve as chief historian, tasked with documenting the events that reshaped our understanding of humanity. The younger species often ask me why we treat humans with such careful respect. This record will explain everything. The council chamber that day was packed with representatives from over 300 species. The air recyclers struggled to handle the various atmospheric requirements of so many different beings. Thick tentacles of artificial fog crept along the floor, carrying specific gas mixtures to different sections where various species required their unique breathing compounds. I stood at my post near the human delegations section, monitoring atmospheric conditions as per my duties. The humans sat quietly in their designated area, their faces displaying that unnervingly neutral expression they had mastered. Ambassador Alexandra Kane sat in the front row, her silver hair pulled back in a severe style that matched her equally severe expression. Looking back, I should have noticed how still they were. Humans are usually such active creatures, always shifting, gesturing, or making those little movements they call fidgeting. But that day they sat like statues carved from stone. High Counselor Priel, then, with his characteristic lack of awareness, droned on about trade regulations in the Outer Rim. His 4 eyes blinked in their asynchronous pattern while his secondary breathing bladders expanded and contracted with self-importance. The Vextari delegation, seated across from the humans, kept shooting what they thought were subtle glances at Ambassador Kane. Their neck frills rippled with barely concealed amusement. I remember checking the atmospheric readings for the human section for the 3rd time that hour. Not because there was any problem, but because the tension in their area was so thick I could have sworn something must be wrong with the air mixture. The readings were perfect, of course. The tension had nothing to do with the atmosphere and everything to do with the vote that was coming. The motion on the floor concerned the recent destruction of a human colony ship, the Stellar Dawn. The Vextari claimed it was a tragic accident caused by the humans' own inferior technology. We had all seen the evidence that suggested otherwise, but most species were willing to accept the Vextari explanation. After all, humans were still relatively new to the galactic community. Their ships probably were not as sophisticated as they claimed. I noticed Ambassador Kane's hand tighten on her datapad when High Counselor Prell then finally addressed the incident, referring to it as a regrettable but ultimately unpreventable accident. Her knuckles turned white, but her face remained perfectly composed. That control, that patience, we would later learn, had been perfected over thousands of years of human diplomacy, and we were about to witness the moment it finally ran out. The various species in the chamber muttered among themselves, their translators creating a cacophony of overlapping languages. The MX Troll delegation's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with skepticism. The Higinoth representatives clicked their mandibles in what I knew to be their expression of dismissal. Even my own species representative, Council Member Rixnan, fluttered his sense membranes in a way that clearly showed he had already decided to vote against the humans' petition for an independent investigation. In that moment, watching the casual dismissal of what we would later learn was an act of deliberate aggression against human civilians. I felt something I had never experienced before in my diplomatic career. Shame. Not for the humans, as many of my colleagues expressed, but for ourselves. We thought we were being so wise, so politically savvy. We were about to learn just how wrong we were. Looking back through our historical archives, the pattern seems so obvious now. Humanity joined the Galactic Council 147 cycles ago. They arrived with open arms, eager to share their knowledge and resources. Their first contact protocols were exemplary, showing a level of cultural sensitivity that should have warned us they were far more sophisticated than they appeared. Let me share some context that the younger generations might not know. When humans first joined the Council, they freely shared their medical knowledge. Their understanding of genetic repair and trauma treatment was remarkable. The Vextari, in particular, benefited from human expertise in treating radiation damage. Yet when humans requested access to Vextari shielding technology in exchange, the Vextari claimed their technology was too advanced for humans to comprehend. Then there was the infamous agricultural exchange program. Humans introduced their drought-resistant crops to 17 struggling colonies across the Outer Rim. These plants thrived in conditions that had previously been considered too harsh for cultivation. The Hegenoth Consortium, which had long profited from their monopoly on food distribution to these colonies, responded by introducing parasites specifically engineered to destroy human crops. When humanity presented evidence of this sabotage to the Council, High Counselor Priel then dismissed it as natural crop failure due to human inexperience with alien environments. I particularly remember the MX Troll incident. Humanity's warning about an approaching solar flare that would have devastated the MX Troll home system saved billions of lives. The MX Troll promised to share their faster-than-light communication technology in gratitude. Yet after their population was safely evacuated, they claimed their technology was a sacred gift from their ancestors and could not be shared with outsiders. Time and again, humanity extended their hand in friendship, only to be met with betrayal or dismissal. Yet they remained patient, so patient that we mistook their restraint for weakness. The Vextari even had a saying, "How do you spot a human diplomat?" They are the ones still smiling after you steal their credits. Ambassador Kane's predecessor, Ambassador Samuel Rivera, once gave a speech that should have served as a warning. His words echo in my memory: "We come seeking friendship, but do not mistake our desire for peace as an inability to wage war." Unfortunately, most council members were too busy mocking his accent to hear the steel beneath his words. The humans even tried to warn us, in their own way. They freely shared their entertainment media, including historical documents they called movies and books about their previous conflicts. We thought these were products of an overactive imagination. How naive we were to dismiss tales of their world wars as mere fiction. The humans had already fought battles that would have destroyed lesser species, and they emerged stronger each time. Their frustration became more evident in the cycles leading up to the breaking point, as we now call it. Their diplomatic corps, once known for hosting elaborate cultural exchange events, became more reserved. Their representatives spoke less frequently at council meetings, though they continued to diligently document every slight and broken promise. I remember overhearing a conversation between two human diplomats in what they thought was an empty corridor. The younger one asked, "How long must we endure this?" The elder replied, "We give them every chance to choose wisdom over folly." The younger one responded with words that should have chilled us all: "Their wisdom is taking an awfully long time to kick in." Even their body language changed, though few of us were skilled enough in human behavioral patterns to notice. Ambassador Kane's habit of drumming her fingers on her datapad during council sessions stopped entirely. The human security personnel, who had always been friendly with other species guards, became politely distant. Their cultural attaches, once eager to arrange exchange programs, started declining invitations to social events. In my role as junior diplomatic officer, I had access to routine scan data of the human quarter of the station. Their living areas, once decorated with art and plants from dozens of worlds, gradually became more austere. Training activities in their exercise facilities increased by 300%. Yet we remained blind to these warning signs. Perhaps most telling was their response to the trade sanctions the Council imposed after humans refused to share their newly developed quantum computing technology. The Vextari representative mockingly suggested humans were too primitive to understand fair trade. Ambassador Kane simply smiled and said, "Your assessment of our capabilities continues to be interesting." That smile. I see it in my nightmares sometimes. Not because it was threatening, but because of how similar it was to the expression she wore on the day everything changed. We had so many chances to change course, to treat humanity with the respect they deserved. Instead, we continued to push, continued to take, continued to mock. The humans have a saying, "the straw that broke the camel's back." When I first heard it, I did not understand how something as insignificant as a piece of dried grass could break a transportation animal's spine. Now, as I document these events, I understand perfectly. It was never about the final straw. It was about all the weight that came before it. The destruction of the Stellar Dawn changed everything. The ship carried 3,427 human civilians, including 712 children. They were settlers, teachers, scientists, and dreamers heading to establish a new colony in what humans called the Aurora Sector. The Vextari claimed the humans had made a navigational error, causing their ship to break apart in the gravitational field of a gas giant. We all saw the footage from the Stellar Dawn's final transmission. The ship's captain, Angela Martinez, remained calm even as warning sirens blared in the background. Her last words were not pleas for help, but instructions to other vessels to stay clear of the ship's predicted breakup zone. Even facing death, these humans thought of others' safety. What the Vextari did not know, what none of us knew, was that humans had developed quantum entanglement recording technology. Every second of data from the Stellar Dawn systems was simultaneously logged at a secure facility on Earth. The humans had evidence of the Vextari energy weapons signatures. They had recordings of the targeting systems locking onto their engines. They had everything. Yet they still followed protocol. Ambassador Kane presented the evidence to the Council with remarkable composure. I stood at my usual post during that session, monitoring atmospheric conditions, when she played the enhanced recordings. The sounds of children singing in the ship's education pod, abruptly silenced by the weapon impact. The calm voices of the engineering team as they tried to save their dying ship. The final lullaby a parent sang to their child in an escape pod, moments before it too was destroyed. Several council members had to excuse themselves during the presentation. I remember High Councillor Preil then secondary breathing bladders deflating in distress. Even the Vextari representatives looked uncomfortable, their neck frills pressed flat against their scales. But discomfort did not equal accountability. The human response surprised everyone. There were no threats, no demands for vengeance. Ambassador Kane submitted a formal request for an independent investigation, following every procedural rule perfectly. She even included ancient council precedents supporting her petition. The humans demonstrated a mastery of our bureaucratic system that should have made us realize how thoroughly they had studied our weaknesses. When the Vextari Trade Minister, Ren Shah, accused humans of fabricating the evidence, Ambassador Kane's response sent chills through my sensory membranes. She speaks, Miss Martinez had a daughter who loved to sing. Her name was Sophia. She was 6 years old. Would you like to hear her final performance? The Vextari Trade Minister declined. The humans continued their diplomatic efforts for 47 standard days. They filed reports. They requested meetings. They followed every procedure, dotted every bureaucratic mark, filed every form. Their patience appeared endless. The council members began to relax, believing that humans would accept this loss as they had accepted so many other slights. I was present when Admiral James Morrison arrived at the station. He moved with the fluid grace all human military personnel seemed to possess, but there was something different about him. His uniform bore no weapons, yet he radiated danger. He spoke privately with Ambassador Kane in the human diplomatic offices. Our surveillance systems could not penetrate their security measures, but I saw them both exit 3 hours later. The ambassador's face bore that same neutral expression, but Admiral Morrison smiled. Not the warm smile humans usually offered, but something predatory. The next day, humanity filed their final petition. The document was a masterpiece of diplomatic language, asking one last time for a formal investigation into the destruction of the Stellar Dawn. They requested an emergency council session to vote on the matter. The rules required the council to convene within 3 days of receiving such a petition. The council members treated it as a mere formality. Many did not even bother to review the evidence before the session. The Hedgeonoth representative was overheard in the diplomatic lounge, saying the humans needed to learn their place in the galactic order. The night before the emergency session, I noticed unusual activity in the human quarter. Their entire diplomatic staff worked through the night, transmitting data back to Earth. Security scans showed they were systematically deleting their local databases. Several council members received this information but dismissed it. The MX Troll ambassador laughed, suggesting the humans were throwing a tantrum. I wish I had understood then what I know now. The humans were not having a tantrum. They were clearing the battlefield. They knew exactly how the vote would go, and they had already decided what would follow. The patience of humanity had finally reached its limit. and we were about to learn why so many of their historical documents spoke of humans as both creators and destroyers. The emergency session began like any other council meeting. The representatives filed in, taking their assigned seats while environmental systems adjusted to their biological needs. But there were differences, subtle ones that most ignored. The human section was unusually empty. Only Ambassador Kane and 3 staff members were present. Admiral Morrison stood at parade rest near the entrance, his presence drawing curious glances. My Counselor Prell then called the session to order with his usual pompous flourish. The lighting in the chamber dimmed slightly, focusing attention on the central speaking platform. The Vex-Tari delegation spoke first, Trade Minister Ren Shea delivering a lengthy speech about unfounded accusations and the importance of unity. His neck frills rippled with false sympathy as he described the Stellar Dawn tragedy as regrettable but natural. Then came the parade of sycophants. Species after species rose to speak, each dismissing human concerns with increasingly patronizing language. The Hegenoth representative suggested humans needed better pilot training. The MX-Troll ambassador recommended humans stick to their own territory until they better understood space travel. Each statement was met with murmurs of agreement from the council chamber. Through it all, Ambassador Kane sat perfectly still, that same neutral expression on her face. Only her eyes moved, scanning the chamber, noting each speaker, each nod of agreement, each dismissive gesture. The datapad before her remained untouched. When the time came for the final vote, High Counselor Prell then did not even bother with a full roll call. A quick electronic poll showed what everyone expected. The petition was denied, 312 species against, 1 in favor. The humans did not even have a single ally in the vote. That should have been the end. The humans should have accepted the decision with their usual patience. But Ambassador Alexandra Kane stood up. The protocol dictated that the session was over. No further discussion was permitted after a vote. But when Kane walked to the central platform, no one stopped her. Perhaps it was the way she moved, with absolute certainty. Perhaps it was the look in her eyes. Or perhaps, deep down, we all knew this moment was inevitable. She did not touch the podium controls. She did not activate the translation systems. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the chamber in perfect galactic standard, a language most species took decades to master. Friends. She let the word hang in the air. For 147 cycles, humanity has called you friends. We shared our medical knowledge. We offered our agricultural advances. We gave warning of natural disasters. We extended our hands in peace and cooperation. The chamber was absolutely silent. Even the environmental systems seemed to quiet. In return, you took our gifts and offered mockery. You sabotaged our crops. You broke your promises. You killed our children. Her voice never rose, never showed anger. Somehow that made it worse. Ambassador Kane raised her hand, and a hologram appeared above the chamber. The faces of every person who died on the Stellar Dawn hung in the air. Men, women, children, all looking out at the council with frozen smiles from their identification photos. You believe us weak because we prefer peace. You mistake patience for cowardice, restraint for inability. You look at our history, shared freely with you all, and see only what you wish to see. She pressed a button on her wrist device. The hologram changed, showing Earth. But not the peaceful blue world we were familiar with. This Earth was scarred, burning, yet surviving. Images flashed showing human conflicts through their history. Not the sanitized versions they usually shared, but the raw footage of their wars. We did not become peaceful because we could not fight. We chose peace because we know war too well. Her words fell like stones in the silent chamber. You were not ready for this truth, so we waited. We gave you every chance to grow beyond your petty rivalries and shallow ambitions. Admiral Morrison stepped forward, handing her a small device. She held it up for all to see. A simple red button, straight from humanity's ancient war films. The absurdity of such a dramatic prop struck me then. Later I would understand it was chosen deliberately, a reference we should have recognized from their shared media. The vote you just held was not to decide our petition. It was your last chance to choose wisdom. You have chosen otherwise. She pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Several council members actually laughed. Then every screen in the chamber lit up with tactical displays. Hundreds of human warships, previously hidden by technology we had not known they possessed, appeared in systems across the galaxy. They had been there all along, waiting. Ambassador Kane's next words burned themselves into my memory. Humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. You have 24 hours to evacuate this station before we demonstrate exactly why we chose to be peaceful. The coordinates of your evacuation routes have been transmitted to your ships. For your own safety, do not deviate from them. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Trade Minister Ren Shah? Sophia Martinez loved to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, remember that. The chamber erupted into chaos. Species that had been enemies for millennia suddenly found themselves crowding the same escape routes. Through it all, the humans calmly walked out, leaving us to face the consequences of our choices. I remember Admiral Morrison's smile as he followed Ambassador Kane. It was the same smile their ancient warriors wore in the historical footage we had dismissed as fiction. The smile of a predator finally unleashed. The evacuation of the Council Station proceeded with surprising orderliness, thanks entirely to human planning. Their evacuation routes were precisely calculated to prevent bottlenecking and conflicts between species that could not share the same atmospheric conditions. Even in this final act, they demonstrated both efficiency and consideration. I witnessed the first demonstration of human military power from the observation deck of a refugee transport. Exactly 24 hours after Ambassador Kane's warning, the human fleet decloaked around the Council Station. Their ships were nothing like the simple vessels they had shown us before. These were sleek predators, their hulls decorated with what we would later learn were called shark mouths, a tradition dating back to their ancient aerial combat craft. Admiral Morrison commanded the operation from the HSS Retribution. The ship's name alone should have been another warning. The humans had never before revealed their military vessel names to the Council. Now we knew why. HSS Nemesis, HSSS Righteous Fury, HSS Remember the Dawn, each name a promise. The Council Station, the pride of galactic civilization for over 10,000 cycles, vanished in an eye blink of focused antimatter annihilation. No debris remained. The humans had not merely destroyed it, they had erased it from existence. The message was clear: they could have done this at any time during the past century and a half. But this was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, human warships appeared in precise, coordinated strikes. They did not target civilian populations or infrastructure. Their attacks focused on military installations, weapons research facilities, and specifically the shipyards and defense platforms of the Vex-Tari. Trade Minister Ren Shah's personal estate on the Vex-Tari homeworld received special attention. A single human ship descended through the atmosphere, broadcasting on all frequencies. The ship's external speakers played a simple melody, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, before reducing the estate to molecular ash. The rest of the planet remained untouched. The Hegenoth attempted to retaliate, launching their dreaded bioweapon swarms. The human ships did not even attempt to evade. The swarms simply died on contact with their hull shielding. Humanity had spent a century studying every weapon we possessed and had developed countermeasures for them all. When the MX Troll deployed their sacred faster-than-light communication disruptors, hoping to break human coordination, they discovered the humans had never been relying on conventional FTL signals. Each human ship operated with perfect tactical synchronization through quantum entanglement systems far beyond anything we had imagined they possessed. Their ground forces were equally terrifying. When the Vex-Tari attempted to hold civilian scientists hostage at a research facility, hoping to bargain, humanity responded by deploying what they called drop troopers. Soldiers in powered combat armor dropped from orbit, their armor absorbing impacts that would have liquefied any known species. They moved with devastating speed and precision, neutralizing the hostage-takers without a single civilian casualty. I had the opportunity to witness one of these operations personally. I was part of a neutral medical team allowed to treat the wounded afterward. The drop troopers towered over us in their armor, yet they helped carry stretchers and comfort the injured. One of them, his armor still scorched from orbital entry, gently sang a lullaby to a frightened Vex-Tari child while a medic treated her minor injuries. That contrast, perhaps more than anything, demonstrated humanity's true nature. They were capable of incredible violence, yet chose to be gentle. Their restraint was not weakness, but a conscious choice made by a species that had mastered both war and peace. The human campaign lasted exactly 7 standard days. In that time, they neutralized every major military installation of the species that had opposed them. Their targets were chosen with surgical precision, minimizing civilian casualties while completely dismantling our ability to make war. Some of their technological revelations were particularly humbling. The navigational error that supposedly destroyed the stellar dawn? Humans had mastered gravimetric field manipulation centuries ago. Their ships could dance through gas-giant gravity wells without concern. The quantum computing technology they had refused to share? It was obsolete by their standards, a polite fiction maintained to avoid embarrassing us. On the 7th day, they sent a message to every world simultaneously. Admiral Morrison delivered it personally, his hologram appearing in every population center across known space. His words were simple: the rules have changed. Humanity will no longer tolerate aggression against innocent civilians of any species. We offer peace, as we always have, but it is now peace backed by absolute strength. To demonstrate their sincerity, they shared a small portion of their medical database cures for diseases that had plagued various species for generations. Aid ships appeared in systems struggling with natural disasters. They offered food to worlds suffering from famine. Even as their warships held position over our capitals, they continued to help. The Vex-Tari leadership attempted one final act of defiance. They launched their entire reserve fleet in a desperate attack on Earth. The human response demonstrated why they had been so tolerant of our previous arrogance. They simply had nothing to fear from us. The Vex-Tari fleet never got within a light year of Sol system. Every ship disappeared into what humans later explained were localized space-time inversions, a defensive technology they had developed but hoped never to use. When human ships rescued the crews of those same Vex-Tari vessels from the time-displaced pockets of space, returning them unharmed to their homeworld, the last vestige of resistance crumbled. The message was clear: humanity could have destroyed us at any time, but they had always chosen preservation over destruction. The sight of High Counselor Prell then signing the new galactic charter under the watchful eyes of human warships was a powerful symbol of change. His breathing bladders remained permanently deflated after that day, a physical manifestation of the humility our species had learned at great cost. As I compile this record, I am struck by the words Admiral Morrison shared during the signing ceremony: we take no pleasure in this show of force. Each weapon we revealed represented a hope that we would never need to use it. Remember this moment, not as a triumph of strength over weakness, but as a lesson about understanding the true nature of those you call friends or enemies. 20 cycles have passed since the event we now call the Awakening. The galaxy has changed in ways none of us could have predicted, though perhaps we should have. Humanity, true to their word, did not seek dominion over other species. Instead, they helped us build something far more valuable: genuine cooperation. The new Galactic Charter, drafted in the wake of their demonstration of power, established principles that would have seemed impossible under the old order. Every species, regardless of technological advancement, now has an equal voice in the Reformed Council. But the true genius of the system lies in its accountability. Gone are the days of empty promises and diplomatic backstabbing. Humanity introduced what they call transparent governance, backed by their quantum monitoring networks. They didn't demand to control these systems, they taught us how to build and operate them ourselves. Trust, but verify, became the new foundation of galactic diplomacy. The Vex-Tari, perhaps the most transformed by these events, now lead the galaxy in technological exchange programs. Their current ambassador is a young scientist who survived the Drop Trooper rescue operation as a child. She still hums Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star during diplomatic sessions, a reminder that turned into a symbol of redemption. Trade Minister Ren Shea works now as a teacher in a mixed-species school on his homeworld. Last cycle, he published a personal account of the Stellar Dawn incident and its aftermath. The book ends with a message to Sofia Martinez's family, a public apology that moved even the most hardened diplomats to their species equivalent of tears. High Counselor Prell then retired to an agricultural world, where he helps coordinate food distribution to developing colonies. The humans suggested this role, understanding that true redemption comes through service to others. His breathing bladders may remain deflated, but his sense of purpose has been restored. The humans themselves? They continue to surprise us. After demonstrating enough military power to subjugate the galaxy, they return to their preferred role as teachers and healers. Their warships remain, a constant reminder of their strength, but they serve primarily as rapid response vessels for natural disasters and humanitarian crises. Ambassador Kane still serves in the Reformed Council, though she now shares the role with representatives from other human worlds. Their colony program expanded dramatically once species began cooperating honestly. Watching her work with the children of various species in the new Council Education Center, you would never guess she was the same person who delivered the speech that changed the galaxy. Admiral Morrison commands the Combined Emergency Response Fleet, a multi-species force that coordinates disaster relief and peaceful exploration. He trained the first class of non-human drop troopers, teaching them that the most powerful weapons are the ones you choose not to use. The site where the old council station once stood now hosts the Stellar Dawn Memorial. It serves as both a monument and a school, where diplomatic staff from all species train together. The central hall displays the names and images of every life lost in the tragedy, surrounding a simple motto: understanding is the first step to peace. Looking back, I understand now why humans shared so much of their entertainment media with us. Their stories repeatedly showed the pattern: humans preferring peace but capable of devastating war, offering friendship but responding decisively to threats against the innocent. We dismissed these as dramatic exaggerations. We should have recognized them as warnings. The humans have a concept they call poetry. One of their ancient poets wrote, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." We thought we understood rage, the hot anger of immediate conflict, the burning desire for quick revenge. But humans taught us about cold rage, about patience that spans generations, about fury focused through the lens of absolute control. My own role has changed significantly. From a junior diplomatic officer monitoring atmospheric conditions, I now serve as chief historian of the Reformed Council. My task is to ensure that future generations understand the lessons we learned at such great cost. The humans suggested this role, recognizing that my presence through these events offered a unique perspective. Yesterday, a young Haguenoth student asked me why we did not see the truth about humans sooner. I showed her the memorial video of the Stellar Dawn's final moments. Captain Martinez, even knowing her ship was doomed, focused on protecting others. I explained that we had seen humanity's true nature from the beginning. We simply failed to understand that their kindness was a choice made by a species capable of far more. The humans have another saying: those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. That is why I record these events, why every diplomatic student now studies the awakening in detail. Not because we fear human power, but because we finally understand the responsibility that comes with power. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was not their display of military might. It was teaching us that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to protect. They showed us that patience is not weakness, that kindness is not naivety, and that understanding others is the greatest power of all. As I finish this historical record, I am reminded of something Ambassador Kane said during the first session of the Reformed Council: let this be remembered not as the day humanity showed its strength, but as the day the galaxy learned the value of respect. She was right. We remember, we understand, and we will never forget.